Good day everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's Londononion here with another Back 4 Blood critical comparison. And the weapons we'll be comparing and contrasting today are the RPK and the M249 LMGs. Now, just some housekeeping before we dissect these weapons. It is important to state the parameters of this critical comparison. First, because of the versatility of deck builds such as the ones that precede this video, weapons can be morphed into variants that increase strengths or balance out needs according to one's playstyle and will only complicate the comparison. So deck build potential will be of minimal consideration. Second, comparison will take place under two main themes: bare bones and fully kitted, which will be explained as we go through the comparison. Lastly, the weapons will be compared based on their common rarity, just for consistency and simplicity. However, I am aware that performance scaling between rarities may create different results if compared at higher levels. At the end, I will state my preference, and I would encourage anybody with opposing or agreeable views to share which of the two weapons they prefer and why. With that, let us get started. To begin our comparison, we're first going to be analyzing the weapons from a bare bones perspective, meaning absolutely no attachments or modifiers of any kind. As usual, we always look at the stats of our weapons first, to have a brief, though incomplete, idea of how these weapons may perform. Looking at these two weapons, the RPK is stated to be superior in range and handling by 10 units each. Meanwhile, the M249 is superior in firepower by 1 unit, accuracy by 5 units, and mobility by 25 units. For those that have been present during our previous weapon comparisons, you'll know that we can't take these numbers at face value, but instead we'll investigate their different stats and speak on their practical use. Looking at firepower first, despite there being an insignificant difference in their firepower, shot for shot, the RPK takes a damage lead by 4 units. The RPK deals 18 units of damage while the M249 inflicts 14. But this is only the surface. The main strength in both of these weapons is their magazine size. The M249 carries double the capacity of the RPK, sitting at a solid 80 rounds. Now, it does not take much Einstein math to determine which of the two will inflict more damage mag for mag and damage over time. The RPK will inflict a grand total of 720 units of damage per magazine. Meanwhile, the M249 towers over the RPK with a grand total of 1,120 units of damage. Continuing on, the M249 has a rather fast fire rate compared to the RPK, which is far more tamed. The only other aspects the RPK comes out on top with is the reload speed and penetration. Both weapons are slow, but the M249 is slower as far as reload speed goes. The penetration of the RPK delivers 13.5 units of damage, while the M249 delivers 10.5. Both are relatively high, in my opinion, but we'll speak on the practicality later. But even with all this said, there is no catching up to and surpassing the M249 with an RPK. So I'm not exactly sure how firepower really works, but it does not seem to go in line with the stats, with the M249 being superior in firepower. As for the range, the RPK is stated to be superior by 10 units. To achieve maximum damage with the RPK, one must be within 19 meters. For the M249, one must be within 17 meters. A relatively small difference, but a difference nonetheless, and this actually stays true with the stats. So the RPK gains the edge in range effectiveness. Moving on to the accuracy of our weapons, there is only a 5-unit difference in the M249's favor. Now, accuracy seems to affect both ADS shot reliability and hipfire reliability. I decided to test out both and got mixed results to a small degree. When testing out ADS reliability, the RPK came out on top, missing 7 rounds or 17.5% of its magazine, while the M249 missed 16 rounds or 20% of its magazine. This is a tiny difference, but still worth considering. For hipfire, both weapons get more accurate as one employs continuous fire. The M249 gets much tighter crosshairs after the first 10 rounds approximately, and will reliably hit a target 10 meters away. The RPK will reach its peak hipfire accuracy after approximately 8 rounds and will also hit with a good amount of reliability. However, due to the fire rate, the RPK will not get as tight as the M249. Additionally, it is far more stressful on the user to stay on target. Lastly, I find that a good judge of accuracy can be noted with the starting crosshairs. The RPK has significantly wider crosshairs than the M249, and this will give merit to the superior stat. Handling seems to be closely related to our previous stat findings, but in order to dig a bit deeper on the weapons, I decided to look at their shot pattern with automatic fire. Both weapons aren't all that different, one just fires faster. Handling mainly seems to be an issue when hip firing, though I think it is worth stressing that using the iron sights on the M249 with automatic fire is quite jittery, hampering one's ability to stay on target, especially if they are a bit further away than 10 meters. The RPK has a more tamed fire rate, so any downsides of its handling should be a seldom experience. Personally, I value handling more from an ADS perspective than hipfire, so I would still give the edge to the RPK. Moving on to the fully kitted side of the comparison, weapons will be dressed and discussed based on their attachments of need, since the attachments are consistent and will garner the same results if the weapons are dressed congruently. The practical use of the weapons, however, is where the heart of the discussion lies. A fully kitted weapon, meaning all purple or higher attachments, will garner very different results for each weapon. Now, in this onion's opinion, adding attachments to a weapon is mainly about compensating for its shortcomings, rather than competing with another weapon of comparison. For barrel attachments, I would say one's options mainly fall in between a compensator and a laser sight. The deciding factor here is ultimately playstyle and card selection, so I can only speak personally when I say that I value a compensator more than a laser sight, as I value ADS more than hipfire reliability with LMGs. As for the magazine attachment, looking at the RPK first, I would personally prioritize magazine capacity and reload speed, in that order. If looking at gold attachments, nothing beats the extended fast mag for increased magazine capacity and reload speed in one. For the M249, I would prioritize reload speed and bullet stumble, in that order. For gold attachments, I would apply the fast HP mag for increased reload speed and bullet stumble. As for sights, I would consider LMGs to be assault rifles on crack, so I wouldn't venture anywhere beyond reflex and hollow sights. Lastly, for the stock, I would supply the RPK with a competition stock to increase ADS speed, as I personally find it rather cumbersome, and if looking at gold attachments, I would naturally apply a light competition stock. The M249, on the other hand, would get a tactical stock, since the weapon has the most cumbersome reload and may require more use of its secondary for emergencies. While on this subject, this will help us to transition into the practical aspect of using these weapons. Personally, I consider both weapons highly effective, despite their differences. Although this was technically not a part of the stats discussion, it is always important to consider the effects of using a given weapon while playing on a team. For those who have followed my weapon reviews, you'll remember that I speak on ammo economy, which is extremely important in determining how a weapon should be used. The M249 is a perfect anchor for a team, but it cannot be abused or overused, and this will create a lot of stress on ammo reserves. And if it is abused, that could be a team without an anchor and is more subject to failure. With this in mind, one secondary will probably have to be their primary until a major threat demands the use of an LMG. The RPK, on the other hand, is tame and still strong, though not as strong, and will allow a more nuanced use of both primary and secondary weapons. In the face of bosses and mutations, the RPK may not perform as strongly, but it will still have greater longevity that is still reliable. Additionally, in the beginning of a given act, decks are barely built, team boosts are minimal, and ammo reserves are for the most part at their default, with card choices and character bonuses in consideration. But anyway, moving on to our verdict. For bare bones, considering the practical aspects of both weapons, I would give the RPK the victory. When fully kitted, both weapons have high performance, not even including a weapon-centered deck build. However, I would say that the M249 takes the win. Usually, by the time one has a fully kitted weapon, they have progressed much further in a given act and have likely accrued bonuses that are more conducive to the regular use of an ammo-heavy weapon. Mix that with the performance-enhancing attachments and the M249 becomes nearly unstoppable, provided one is not caught off guard and with a considerate team. Both weapons can ultimately fulfill the role of anchor/chaos controller. The M249 just does it better in the areas that matter most. Similar to our comparison of the Super 90 and the AA-12 shotguns, the RPK seems more suited for ridden and most mutations, while the M249 is best suited for tough mutations and bosses. The RPK has greater longevity, while the M249 has greater carnage. Now, I know deck builds can make alternative possibilities, but because of how versatile decks can be, that is a conversation far too complex for a discussion like this. But I'd love to hear from you guys as to what your take is on this comparison. Do you prefer the RPK or the M249? And if there are any disagreements, I welcome critical discussion, so feel free to leave your opinion on this comparison. But otherwise, that concludes the discussion. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, and in our next video, we'll be comparing the M4 and the M16 assault rifles. It's been Londononion, and I will see you guys next time.